Stop. Hammer time. Years ago, I helped out a cheap retail store with their security. In downtime, I would help on stock, but it was also my job to make sure kids weren't messing with the party supplies, people weren't shoplifting, etc. Part of my job at close was to check all the shelves and under them in case boxes were misplaced or stock went missing. Customers would hoard a basket of things to look like they were shopping, then ditch the basket under the shelf and leave with a single object, so it was necessary. I was visiting family for a few days and received a text from my manager asking when I was coming back. I thought it was weird, but I thought nothing of it as I'd be back the next day. When I arrived back at work, they showed me the security tapes. A customer with a bag containing nothing but a sledgehammer walked into the store and slid himself under the shelf a few hours before close, and then just waited perfectly still for close. The staff member taking over my close duties did not do a shelf check that day. If I had not decided to take those few days off, and it was a struggle to decide as I was on minimum wage and needed the money, I would have found myself face to face with a creeper and a sledgehammer. He lay in wait, surprisingly, but thankfully, as the manager stood at the till counting all the cash openly at the counter. The store was locked at the front by now. He continued to just lie there. The employees all left the store from the back warehouse entrance, and that's when the guy came out. He bust down the office door where the safe was kept, and then he tried to use his sledgehammer to literally knock the safe off the bolts in the floor. By this time, the security alarms had been set off from him breaking the door, and my boss was coming back to the office through the back because he forgot something when they all locked up that day. He came face to face with the man who chased him back outside. My boss hid in some dumpsters, and the man ran into the car park and into the distance with his sledgehammer in tow. After his entire 3 or so hour stakeout and operation, he left with nothing except, I'm assuming, sore arms. If you're reading this, thank you for choosing a day I wasn't working. Let's keep it that way. Sledgehammer man, wherever you are, let's not meet. Creepy cab driver. This is nowhere near as bad as the majority of the stories I've read on here, but anyway. When this happened, I was 19 in London. My then boyfriend had called me a cab to go home from his place, which is about a 30-minute drive. His car was in the shop at the time. Before I got in the cab, he kissed me and told me to text him when I got home, in earshot of the driver. I get in and the man starts a friendly conversation about what I'm studying. Nothing unusual, but the conversation starts to get a bit personal when he tells me he's from Pakistan and a Muslim. He then asks me if I am too. I'm Iranian and my family is Muslim, but I don't practice. But I just said yes to not cause any awkwardness. He started to tell me I look like a good Muslim girl and that he wanted to marry someone like me. I became increasingly uncomfortable and noticed he deliberately turned onto a street that would make the ride 15 minutes longer than the usual route. I text my boyfriend saying the taxi driver is creepy, and he replies telling me to keep texting him until I get home, so he knows that I'm okay. The cab driver asks if the guy that said goodbye to me was my boyfriend, and I immediately said yes, hoping that would shut him up. He asks if we're serious, and I said yes, and he continues saying he wants someone exactly like me. He then locks the car doors. I ask him why he did that, and he says for safety. I swear my mouth was so dry I could hardly swallow. I was pretty scared, but I didn't say anything because he was still going towards my house, and I didn't want to make him angry. He asked me the most disgusting questions. If I was still a virgin, if I'd ever done stuff with a man. I refused to answer and kept frantically texting my boyfriend, but the douche had earlier left his phone somewhere or fallen asleep. So much for being worried for my safety. When we finally get there, he overcharged me, told me he had my number and that he was going to call me so we could meet. I said I won't because I'm in a relationship and my family wouldn't like that. He said I can keep it a secret. I tried to open the door to get out, but it was still locked and he laughed. He then stared at me intensely through the rearview mirror for what felt like a full minute. My stomach felt hollow and the street was quiet and dark, which made it feel even more creepy. He finally unlocked the door and I booked it to my front door and frantically knocked as I looked for my key. My mom asked why I looked so pale and I told her. She proceeded to call the cab company to make a complaint and they admitted he'd done this before and promised they would fire him, and we reported it to the police. But they didn't pursue it since he hadn't harmed me. Mr. Cab Driver, I hope we never meet again. And no, I won't marry you. Not my night. Just found this and have spent my morning reading all the crazy stories. I thought I'd put mine in there too. I'm a female in my late 20s, short and small. I happened to be downtown one evening with my mom and sister. There was a little art festival and I was dressed up in a costume that made me look about 12 years old. Think pastel colors, bows, a fluffy dress. My family and I stayed in downtown until almost 10 p.m. and then we separated and I start my way home by myself when I realize the gas light is on. So luckily I still had one more gas station before the 30-minute drive through country roads to get to my house. The gas station is closed, but their card reader is working, so I start filling up. I park right where there is the most light because nobody else is around, except an 18-wheeler parked at the edge of the parking lot, and I notice an SUV pull up. They park just out of the light, but not far from my car. The driver's window's down and I can hear their voices. They start talking about something and I hear the word girl and can see the driver's arm gesture towards me. At this point I am wishing I had on different clothes. I am trying to get finished. I'm thinking maybe they want to get gas but are just waiting on me to leave. So I quickly put up the gas pump and get into my car as fast as possible. This SUV starts following me as soon as I move my car. They don't get gas or pretend to be doing something. As soon as my vehicle moves, theirs is moving also. It starts out real close to me and then every once in a while, it will slow down and get far back, and then it will rev up and get real close to me again. It does this for almost the entire 30-minute drive, and at this point I am so freaked out that I tell myself that if they follow me all the way to my neighborhood area, I'm just going to bypass my house and drive to the police station. They followed me up until I got onto a road similar to the interstate, mostly a straight shot with no houses or anything, and they would have no clue how far I'd have to drive before I pull over, so they can do whatever to me. As I turned onto the on-ramp, the vehicle slowed to almost a crawl and watched me get onto the road. I was afraid they were going to turn around and follow me more, and I was only about 5 minutes from home. A few weeks later, I found out that some people were caught human trafficking over there in the area that I got gas. I don't know what you wanted, dudes, but please, let's not meet. Don't touch my cat door, please. This just happened last night. I was Googling for similar experiences when I found this subreddit. I live alone with my 2 cats. Typical Redditor? This is one of those definitely mundane sounding but so creepy in real life things. I don't scare easily, for what it's worth. Anyway, there's a cat door in my rear slider. The slider faces the woods behind my condo. The cats get supervised outside time, and I use a little nanny cam to check that they're checking in regularly. I can watch it from my computer or phone while I'm doing stuff. I also occasionally get neighbor cats who come in for a bite to eat. My male cat loves it. My female cat hates it. Anyway, this one gray cat comes around every few days, comes in, has a snack. I scoot him out and it's no big deal. Well, he'd been coming around really late at night and pawing at the locked cat door. It scared me at first because it was a terrifying sound to hear in the middle of the night. Half scratching, half rattling. I was able to figure this one out pretty easily by just listening. My cats would run to the rear slider. The female would hiss and the male would meow, and I would hear something scamper away. Easy. Neighbor cat came in for a midnight visit. Couldn't get in. Anyway, my nanny cam has automatic night vision which turns on when it's too dark. I had the cats in last night and the cat door was locked shut. The patio light outside the slider was turned off and I was getting into bed. Just as I'd gotten under the covers, I heard the scratching, rattling sound at the locked cat door. I opened the app and definitely did not see a cat. It didn't help that the night vision makes everything look super creepy, but regardless, I was freaked the fuck out. There was a scraggly looking person hunched over on my patio playing with the locked cat door. My female cat hissed, and he got up and left. I guess it could have been a she. I never saw a face. And I only caught a few frames while my blood ran cold. Looked like he was wearing a loose t-shirt. I'm going to set up my camera to record if I hear anything tonight. I just logged in from work and took a still image. The curtains are closed and I circled where the cat door is. If someone reminds me, I'll grab a still image tonight, in the dark, with the curtains open so you can see what it looks like at night. Oh, and yeah, I called the cops. They had a cruiser nearby. He did a drive-through and walked the area out back. It was late, so I didn't give a statement or even meet with the officer. but I did see his flashlight last night as he walked the tree line. Also, here's a picture I just happened to take, unrelated, of my grill on the patio. Treeline is visible. Edit. There is an opening in my fence that you can see in this old picture. Female guard cat seen here. This is before I added the cat door. And here is an image of where my camera used to be mounted. It's not waterproof, however, so it didn't stay here long. Also, you can see how creepy it makes night images look. This is the same spot that one of my new cameras will have. They are waterproof. Double edit. These are the cameras I ordered. Triple edit. Snagged a sample image when I got home. Cats are outside playing, hence the hard plastic door is removed. Timestamp enabled. Please note that I have 2 metal security bars. You can see one is slightly askew, but that's only because I was recently outside and plan to go back out. Edit-tacular. IR mode on. Lights still on outside. 8:16. Update. Nothing last night. For what it's worth, I've only heard anything on an average of maybe once every week or two. The more I think about it, the more I wonder if I just saw a trash bag blowing by that coincided with the neighbor cat scratching or something. I don't know. Seems so weird that someone would be messing with a cat door. 8:17. Update. Nothing last night. Outdoor cameras arrived today. I'm hoping to have time to install one before it gets dark tonight. I was going to update with an image, but my existing camera went dead. Update 2. Amazon cameras arrived. Installed and tested.
Always lock your front door.
Some years ago, I was living in a ramshackle warehouse in a shitty area. It was in a commercial zone, so no one was meant to be living there, and the interior was essentially built from scraps, so kind of a death trap. I couldn't live in those conditions now, but I guess when you're young, it's not a big deal. The parties were fun. However, the guys who worked at nearby businesses were creeps, and there were lots of unpredictable, mentally unwell elderly people roaming around. The warehouse had been robbed a number of times when the door was occasionally left unlocked. A lot of people lived and crashed there, so people would leave the door unlocked for their friends. As a result, a rule was made that the front door had to always be locked. Despite this, one afternoon my housemate ducked out to the service station for 5 minutes, leaving the front door unlocked. I was home alone, a female in my early 20s, in a sprawling, dusty warehouse with next to no natural light. The stairs to my bedroom were the kind of stairs you could see through, reaching a platform in front of my bedroom, more like a haphazard shack in the rafters that overlooked the front door. I was walking up the stairs with heavy, unself-conscious steps in full housebound slob mode, preparing to dive into my bed with my laptop. Suddenly, an unfamiliar figure stepped through the front door downstairs. A gaunt, hollow-cheeked, junky-looking guy dressed in a tracksuit, a backpack slung over one shoulder. He moved soundlessly and calmly. I stood at the top of the stairs staring down in frozen shock, clutching my open laptop in my hand. He didn't immediately register me in the dim light, but when his eyes met mine, he simply turned around and exited in silence, leaving the door open behind him. It was chilling how casual he was about it. Luckily, my housemate returned soon after, but I'm still relieved I didn't encounter the man while I was lying in bed.
Saved by a stranger.
A few summers ago, just before the start of my junior year in college, I decided to take a trip to San Francisco. Since I attended my home state's flagship university, I really needed a brief change of scenery. I have always wanted to be in California, which was convenient as one of my friends was interning in San Francisco and offered to let me stay with her. All the details were worked out and I was so excited to go. My friend was still interning while I visited, so she wasn't able to show me around. But I had a blast exploring on my own. I spent a majority of my time reading at different parks and taking pictures. She got off work at 5, so I would head back around then to hang out with her. I always knew I was close to hers when I saw the construction. It was a huge project that required pedestrians to navigate through tunnels. I had been through them many times before, but on that particular day, someone ran up next to me right as we entered the dimly lit passage. He was a larger guy, wearing a white wife beater and blue jeans. I'm usually pretty friendly, but something felt off about him. We awkwardly exchanged "heys" before I quickened my pace, expecting him to just drift away. But he changed his pace to match mine and kept lingering. "What's your name?" he asked. "None of your business," I responded without looking at him, hoping he'd get the hint. He didn't. "You're really pretty. Do you want to go to a party?" But before giving me time to even respond, he grabbed my arm. He was pulling me towards the end of the tunnel. I had no idea what awaited me there. His grip was so incredibly tight and he was so much bigger than me. There was no way I could escape by strength alone. Despite being a very thin person, I didn't have any pepper spray or self-defense skills. I never felt so vulnerable in my life. My mind was trying to find a way to survive, but then I felt someone else pull my other arm from behind. I thought it was all over, but I looked back and saw that it was a woman around my mom's age, dressed in business attire. Needless to say, I was confused. "Hey, it's really you. I haven't seen you in so long," she exclaimed as she transitioned into sprinting towards the way she came and pulled me with her. I let out a sigh of relief as I felt his grip loosen. I was ecstatic to exit the tunnel. When I looked back, he was gone. She told me that she saw the guy go after me and knew that something was wrong. She walked the remaining block with me to my friend's place. I thanked her for everything and we hugged before I hurried to tell my friend what had just happened. We never even got to exchange names, but I don't know what I would have done without her. It warms my heart to know that there are people out there who have the courage to help others. I recently moved to San Francisco with some pepper spray, and the construction at the site of the incident has been completed. Even so, I think of her every time I pass by.
maybe not such a coincidence after all.
When I was in college, I traveled a lot to visit my long-distance boyfriend. Every Friday afternoon, I'd pack up for a 3-hour drive and be back late Sunday night for Monday classes. After a while, this got to be a pretty strict routine. For years, nothing really ever happened, and I never got off the interstate if I could help it. One Sunday, I drove home early so I could get back to my dorm before dark. And all the way down the interstate, I took notice of a black sports car that had been driving with me since my boyfriend's hometown. At first, I couldn't figure out why this was weird, but the fact is I was a really slow driver and a lumbering SUV. Most people, especially sports cars, passed me at every opportunity. Still, I chalked it up to coincidence and made sure to keep an eye on the car as I was traveling. After about 2 hours of this guy religiously following behind me, I was starting to get pretty freaked out. However, by then I had managed to get a good look at him in my rearview mirror and noticed he wasn't much older than me. He was just an average-looking guy, so I tried to talk myself out of thinking anything too bad about him. It didn't help much, honestly. I still had a really bad feeling. I started to speed up and slow down, basically driving as bad as I could without hurting anyone, just to see if he'd stay with me. He did. Every time I sped up, he fell in line right behind me again, and every time I slowed down, even 30 below the speed limit, he wouldn't pass me. I panicked and made a stupid decision. I got off the interstate at a gas station and pulled in. I wanted to see if he'd follow me, and sure enough, he did. I watched him as he parked across the parking lot. I could see him staring at me from my peripheral vision as I rushed inside the gas station, thinking he wouldn't follow me where there were people and cameras. I was wrong, though. He did follow me inside and headed me off at one of the aisles. I turned back the way I came just as he tried to say something to me, but I was already gone before I could hear what it was. I ran back to the bathrooms and locked myself inside the woman's restroom, not even considering the fact that I was letting myself be concerned. A few seconds after I slid the deadbolt over, the door began to shake, violently. The doorknob was being turned as far as it would go in either direction, and the deadbolt rattled so much I was scared it would come loose. It felt like forever, but I'm sure it was only a few seconds before it suddenly stopped. I stayed in the restroom for another 10 minutes, keeping track of the time on my phone, until I thought he had to be gone. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to call the cops, but I snuck out of the restroom as quietly as I could. The cashier was waiting for me, watching for me to come out, and asked if I needed his help. He made it clear that he thought something was really wrong, but I was still too freaked out to think straight. I just shook my head and said, "I'm not sure." I bolted from my car and saw that the stalker guy was sitting in his own car again, watching the gas station doors. I guess just to see when I'd come out. I got into my car just as I heard his car start, and I sped back onto the interstate. He followed me into a jumble of tractor trailers, and after a few minutes of chaotic traffic, I finally lost him. For such an average-looking guy, he was incredibly freaky. I definitely never want to meet that man again.
He was only in my room.
So I've told this story on Reddit before. I love this sub, and for some reason it never really occurred to me to submit it here. So here goes. All true, and definitely the weirdest and creepiest thing that has ever happened to me. When I was a junior in high school, I got my license. Getting my license meant that I would be the first person home for a good few hours. After the initial excitement of having the house to myself wore off, I got into a routine. I would come home, greet our border collie, Moss, make a snack, watch some TV, and then eventually head up to my room. To truly appreciate this story, it's important to know the layout of my parents' house, which is where this all happened. My parents' house was an old Cape Cod-style home. By their estimate, it was built sometime in the late 18th century. The way it's set up, you go in through a back door, and right at that door is a set of stairs. Up those stairs are 2 bedrooms, one to your left and one to your right. My bedroom at the time was the one to the right. There is another set of stairs all the way on the other side of the house at the actual front door that leads to another couple of bedrooms. My parents' master bedroom is on the main floor. My family only ever used the back door to get into the house. We never used the front door or the actual back door, which led to a deck. I'd guess that on the day this happened, the majority of those doors were unlocked since they live in a small town, Maine. Anyway, on this particular day, I came home and went through my routine of greeting the dog and making a snack. I watched TV for probably about a half hour to an hour, and then decided to go upstairs and do whatever teenaged me wanted to do. At this point, I had been home for probably a good hour or so. Like usual, I climbed the stairs with Moss trailing behind me. The stairs creaked while I did it, as they do. Nothing seemed out of place or unusual. However, when I opened my door, everything in my room had been destroyed. My bed, 4-post frame and all, which was normally against the wall facing the stairs, was in the middle of the room. All of my clothes were out of the dressers, which were each feet away from the wall where they were supposed to be. My underwear drawers were completely out of the dresser. Some of my underwear was laid out on the bed, the only things neatly placed in the room that had been scattered. My clothes were everywhere. My furniture was everywhere. Not a single other thing in the house had been touched, and nothing in it was missing. It was only my room. Obviously, I immediately booked it. I took the dog, got in the car, and called my mom, and sat on the side street until someone was there. The police came, and there was nothing they could do. There was nothing they could find that would link someone to it. So for the next few months, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere by myself or do anything alone. However, one thing that's always bothered me, I know I unlocked that back door that day, like I always did. Since it was our main entrance to the house, it was always locked. So whoever went into my room came in through another door, went through the entire downstairs to my staircase, found my room, and went through my things. They knew where they were going. So whoever went through my room when I was 16, let's never meet.
Modeling for a creep.
So this happened when I lived in Japan. I was 16, and anyone who is not familiar with the Japanese culture should know that most of the older Japanese men love younger girls. I had just finished a shoot and was walking out the main entrance of this well-known agency, and there was this guy who looked about mid to late 30s standing out front, just waiting. I walked past him in the direction of the train station to go home, and I hear him talking to me in half English, half Japanese. I turned to see what may be wrong, and he asked if I can take your picture, and I told him no, I was going home for the day. He then starts acting really creepy and being very sporadic in his movements, asking over and over to take my picture. He then grabs me by the arm and tries to pull me over to his car. At that point, I have shoved him away very forcefully and started yelling, which was causing people to look over at the commotion. The unwanted attention made him stop. I started walking very fast towards the train station, looking back every once in a while to keep an eye on this creeper. Then I noticed that he is following me. I pick up the pace even more to try to lose him. I get to the train station, buy my ticket at the kiosk, and board my train for home. Scared, out of breath, and relieved that I made it to the train, and looks to have lost the man following me. I let out a sigh of relief, looked over, and there in the next train car was the guy, just staring at me with this creepy look on his face like he was imagining me in pieces. My stomach turned and I felt panic wash over me. I remember going over all the possibilities of how to handle this situation. The best I could muster up was to just stay on the train and hopefully wait him out, as I did not want him to know which stop I was getting off at. I rode the train that day 2 hours before he eventually got off, the whole time just grinning and staring at me.
They just parked there and watched.
This is a story that happened when I was younger and has creeped me out many a night since, because it was so unknown. There was never any resolve, which makes it so creepy. I'm the middle child of 3 girls. My older sister is 3 years older than me. I'll call her Ariel. And my younger sister is 3 years younger than me. I'll call her Belle. We lived in a small town that was mostly a farming community. We lived in an old 2-story house that I'll probably talk about on Reddit no sleep because that old thing was very haunted. Anyway, when Ariel turned 13, my parents rejoiced in having a free babysitter. They made a couple of quick trips to the closest grocery store to test how she handled being alone, and she passed swimmingly. We were all on our best behavior because we wanted the freedom that comes with staying by yourself. So our ages were 13, 10, and 7. My parents decided to take a longer trip out to get a few supplies for some house renovating we were doing to the old fixer-upper we lived in. My sisters and I decided it was time to finally beat The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. We'd gotten to the final castle and we were determined we would have it beat by the time they got back. We didn't. Our living room was at the front of the house, on the right side when you came in through the front door. It was a strangely designed room, with the wall to the far side being a mirror, and the wall at the front of the house having 5 windows. We didn't have any curtains on the window at the time because my dad was redesigning the room. We were on the floor playing our video game when Belle happened to glance out the window and noticed a car driving very slowly down our street. We knew our neighbors' cars because they never changed. It was a short red car and no one in our neighborhood owned it. It was dark out, but we had a pair of pillar lights at the end of our driveway that illuminated the end of our driveway. The car came to a stop in front of it. I didn't think much of that, but my Ariel did. She didn't let on that she worried though. Well, the car turned into our driveway very slowly and sat there for a good 5 minutes. I was still not paying attention, but I noticed Ariel was very tense. "Everything okay?" She shook her head and stood up slowly. She motioned for me and Belle to do the same, which we did. I was beginning to worry, but I didn't want to look like a wimp, so I pretended I was annoyed. "We're going to the kitchen, okay? Be quiet." I remember very clearly that her voice was quiet and strangely calm for how tense she was standing. She was staring at the car and stopped abruptly when it began to move once more. It slowly inched towards our house until it was halfway down our long driveway and stopped once more. Ariel stood still and I remember Belle shuffling closer to her. I was confused at who the strange car belonged to. I opened my mouth to ask what was going on when the car's front doors opened and 2 people stepped out. We couldn't make anything out of what they looked like because the light was behind them and they were mostly dark blobs. I remember them looking large, though that might have just been my frightened mind. My sister grabbed Belle's hand and ran out of the room hollering at me to follow. I did, and she led us to the kitchen, which was in the back of the house. You could see the dining room through it and look out at the window without being seen. She knocked the kitchen lights off just to be safe and grabbed the phone while we stood in the kitchen. Belle started to sob in fear and I was told to hold her. I couldn't tear my eyes from our driveway. The figures had stepped away from their car, but they were still just standing there, looking at our house. "Mom?" Ariel's voice was higher than I'd ever heard it as she quickly relayed what was going on to my parents. They kept her on the phone while they drove back to us. Ariel had me grab a steak knife and took a butcher knife for herself while we waited for them to get back. And all the while, the 2 people just stood there, staring at the house. It felt like I was in some kind of nightmare, just sitting there wondering who they were and what they wanted. Then, for seemingly no reason at all, they got back into their car and backed out of the driveway. They pulled back on the road and raced off right as my parents pulled on the street. They stopped long enough for my mom to get out of the car before my dad raced off after the other car. He never caught it. So, creepy people who stood in my driveway for 20+ minutes? Let's not meet.
I was in the shower.
My twin sister and I moved into an old duplex a couple of weeks ago, in a unit above 2 other young women. We got an amazing deal on the rent, considering that this is a nice neighborhood full of wealthy families and a very low crime rate. It's super nice, hardwood floors, exposed walls, and more storage space than we even knew what to do with. giant closets in literally every room. My sister and I felt safe and quickly settled in. A few nights ago, I was in the bathroom taking a shower. My sister was in her bedroom on her laptop. Even though I felt reasonably safe in my home, I always made sure that the doors were locked, deadbolted. And since we live on the upper level, I had no worries about people coming in through the windows or anything like that. My sister had forgotten to lock up after leaving a couple of times since we'd moved in, but fortunately it didn't look like anyone had let themselves in or anything like that. In my old neighborhood, that was basically begging to get burglarized. At the moment, at least, our place was secure. So I'm taking my shower and just kind of spacing out. Our shower is one of those ones that's a bathtub with a wraparound shower curtain. The curtain facing the door is opaque, and the curtain facing the wall in the closet of the bathroom is clear. I turned around to rinse the shampoo out of my hair just in time to see the bathroom's closet door fly open, banging against the wall. I'd like to say that my survival instincts kicked in, and I immediately got the hell out of there. But I just froze. My eyes going wide and my hands still in my soapy hair. A man sprinted out of the closet, barely even looking at me, and ran out of the bathroom and around the corner to where the front door in my sister's room was. I screamed my sister's name and scrambled out of the shower, barely even stopping to throw a towel on, and I sprinted out the door after him, worried he was going to try to hurt her or something. Before I even turned the corner, I heard the front door open and his quick steps down the stairs, and the opening and slamming of the front door as he ran out onto the street. My sister opened her door a second later, utterly confused, as I ran out to deadbolt our unit's door, shaking and crying, not able to string two words together. She put two and two together and phoned the police, who were there in less than 10 minutes. Since I only saw the man for a second and my sister didn't see him at all, the only description I could give was that he looked to be a white man in his 30s or 40s. He still hasn't been found, and I still have no idea what he was doing in my bathroom closet. He didn't rob us or try to hurt us, and he didn't look to be homeless or anything like that. So I really don't know why this happened. But regardless, my sister has gotten a lot better about locking our doors, and we don't feel nearly as safe as when we first moved in.
Pedophile grandpa of a playmate.
I'm a 13-year-old girl, and I have a very close friend and neighbor whom I used to hang out with almost every day. I am 1 year older than her, and I've known her for 6 years. Her grandparents, a couple in their late 60s, live a few doors away from their house, and they watch over her whenever her parents are still at work. My house is across theirs, so it's very easy for us to visit each other. Every day after school, my friend invites me to come over to her house to watch our favorite shows on TV or on YouTube. Her grandpa supervises us all the time. And then after 1 hour, we usually head over to my house to have dinner. My mom is a great cook, and she likes it when my friend appreciates her cooking. This goes on for years. It has become a tradition. Sometimes my mom would send her grandparents some home-cooked meals too. Her grandma is sickly and doesn't cook much. They would then give us veggies from their backyard garden. Everything was going great till I hit puberty. Once I started showing signs of puberty, age 10, her grandpa paid me more attention. He started sending me text messages asking how my day was, etc. He would also give me hugs, call me my pretty girl, get upset when I can't have a play date with my friend, and would come knocking on our door when he hasn't seen me for 2 days straight, 'cause I'm busy with other stuff. 2 years have passed and he's paying me more and more attention. I told him once that he was creeping me out and he got all upset and pouted his lips like a kid. One day I told my mom about it, since she likes the old couple and even thought that they are marriage goals. She shrugged it off and told me I'm being paranoid. She said that maybe he just became attached to me and thinks of me as his grandkid too. I felt bad about it, so I sent him a text message apologizing for what I said. He gladly accepted my apology and came knocking on our door with a basket of goodies. Something about his smile still creeped me out, so I never let my guard down. He started calling me baby girl and asked me to call him BF, best friend, which is odd because his grandkid is my best friend. Every time I'm at my friend's house, he would sit between us and put his arms around me, and he would even rub his cheek on mine, which is so disturbing. One time I had a fight with my friend and I headed out the door. He grabbed my arm and forced me and my friend to say sorry to each other. I refused to say sorry and he grabbed my arm again and said, "I never want to lose you." He also walked me over to my house, and when we were by the door, he puckered up and asked me for a kiss on the lips. I was like, what the fuck? This really isn't right. I got so grossed out and said no and went inside quickly. This time I really had enough. I told my dad and mom about him asking for a kiss. Finally, my mom realized he is not an innocent old man. My dad wanted to confront him, but me and my mom begged him not to because we don't want any trouble. They decided that I can't see my friend anymore since her grandpa will be hovering around me again. They didn't want to give him a reason to be around me. He would still show up at my doorstep once in a while and ask for me. My mom would answer the door with a fake smile on her face and tell him that I'm busy. I also changed my phone number so that he can't contact me. One thing that hurts was not being able to see my friend anymore. But I don't really know if she really likes me as a friend, or if her grandpa just forced her to be friends with me. 'Cause ever since I was forbidden to see her, I called her and said that I won't be able to hang out for a while. She didn't question me and just said, "Oh, okay." It is now awkward for me to go out in my yard. I freak out thinking he might see me and come talk to me. So now I keep myself busy with studies and extracurricular activities after school. Edit 1. He wasn't the first creep that I encountered. There was this guy in his early 20s around my neighborhood who followed me home once when I was 11. He thought I was 18 because I am pretty tall for my age. He apologized and never bothered me again. Funny thing was, my playmate's grandpa confronted the guy, even after he apologized. He also lectured me about creeps. Who knew he was a bigger creep than the guy in his 20s? Edit 2. I just remembered. He was also into online games for kids. He downloaded this Line Play app, supposed to be for his grandkid to use, since she borrows his phone a lot. It is like a virtual reality where you can make an avatar. He ended up using it for himself, where he poses as a 15-year-old boy on his profile, probably to lure other kids who have no idea he is old. He used it to talk to me more and hang out with me in virtual parks. I deleted my account and I bet he still has his and is probably talking to other kids. Parents, check who your kids are talking to online. There are lots of creeps on gaming apps for kids. Creepy Grandpa, let's not meet again.
I was victorious.
3 years ago, when I was 17, female, in the month of November, I kept hearing scraping noises outside my window. I was on the second floor, so I automatically dismissed animals as the source of the noise. It happened every night for 3 days straight, but I was too afraid to pull back my curtains to see what it was. But the fourth night, I was absolutely sick of it. So when it started up again around 1 a.m. in the morning, I peeked outside of my window. I was met with the sight of a man in black, illuminated by the streetlights behind him. From my little corner of the window, he couldn't see me. I was horrified to see that the scratching noises that I kept hearing were him trying to stealthily open the locked screen on my window. I was stupid, and I didn't call 911, but I did the next best thing. Where I live, I have blackout curtains, which were currently covering my window, so he couldn't actually really even see if there was any light in my room. So I turned on my light and grabbed a mask, an anonymous mask, if you must know, Halloween. I got really close to the window and threw the curtains open. Man, did he look surprised and let out a yelp. Poor guy fell off the ladder he was on. Then I did call 911 because the reality had set in, and I realized how dangerous a situation it was. He somehow managed to limp off into the night before the police got there, and the police never did manage to find him. There had been reports of the same thing all over the neighborhood, all from teen girls' windows, but there was never any concrete proof, like a ladder and the gouges on my screen. Turns out he'd been taking the ladder from the garden shed each night, and admittedly, very quietly, had been trying to get into my room. I'm going to assume it wasn't a robbery and his intentions were much more worrying. But I think I really scared him, because he never came back.
The Metallica fan.
This happened during the summer of 2004. I live with my husband and children in a small town about 50 miles outside a major city. My town is relatively quiet without much crime, but we do get the occasional break-in and other petty crime. I should also note that my area seems to get many more door-to-door salesmen in church groups, but I generally consider it more annoying than anything menacing. It was around 10 a.m. and I was home alone, cleaning the house and listening to music. Metallica, to be exact. I had my front window open that faces out my front door as we don't have any central air and it was pretty hot that day. Someone knocks on my door and I look through the window to see a girl I would guess in her early 20s standing there. She has a clipboard and a pen in her hand. I assume she's selling something. I turn off my music and open the door, ready to tell her I'm not interested. She immediately hands me a laminated card with a list of magazines she's selling. I'm holding this card, not really reading it, and was about to hand it back to her when I flip the card over and see written in red pen, "This girl is crazy. Do not let her in your house." I'm shitting bricks when I read this, and I'm about to slam the door on her when she says, "I love Metallica. Turn it back on." She pushed her way past me and sat on my couch in my living room, which is about 5 feet from my front door. I'm still standing in the doorway of my living room in utter shock. I just stare at her for 5 to 10 seconds before I find my voice. I tell her she needs to leave now. She lit up a cigarette and walks over to my stereo to turn the music back on. By this point, I'm completely freaking out and walk to my kitchen to grab my phone to call the police. She ran out of the door before I could even dial. I live 2 blocks from the police station and they're there in less than 5 minutes. Long story short, they aren't able to find her, but they tell me they've gotten complaints about someone that fits her description from other people in the area as well. A neighbor down the block told me she came to her door too. She didn't try to go into her house, but she was super pushy and kept saying odd things, like "let's go shopping sometime" and other nonsense. So, creepy magazine salesgirl / Metallica fan, let's not meet again.
'96.
It was about 12:30 a.m., and I just finished my dance show. I then realized my mom was picking me up from the train station, the other side of town. I was worried as I didn't know my way to the train station from the current theater I was at. I crossed the road and looked around for someone who didn't look either too drunk or too creepy, when I saw a tall mixed-race man smoking a cigarette outside a Burger King. I asked him where the station was, and he told me I should walk straight up the road, and I should see it. So I went on my way. Bear in mind I had a suit bag containing all my costumes, a handbag, and a plastic bag with 6 water bottles in it. I was also wearing a red top that said 96 on the back, as it was my finale clothes, and I was simply too lazy to get back dressed. I walked a little further up the road when I saw the same man outside some Irish bars. "Would you like to come to Warrington with me?" he asked. Now, I'm only 15 and quite socially awkward, so I just stared at him, expecting him to tell me he was joking. Instead, he grabbed my top and started touching my back and stroking me. He whispered in a nursery rhyme-like tone, 96, and again, 96, and again, 96. I managed to escape his grasp, but for some stupid reason I did not run, in fear he would run too, and I'm not that fast. I got up to the top of the road when I approached 4 girls on a hen night and asked them again if they knew where the station was, because I still clearly couldn't see it, and they told me to go up the alleyway and turn left. The only thing was, this alley was shady and full of weird corner shops that sell pot or some shit. I walked down the alley, and about halfway, the bag containing my water bottles split, and all my waters fell into the ground. Whilst picking them up, I hear a chime of a shop door behind me, and I suddenly get the feeling I was being watched. I slowly turn around and there was the same fucking man as the 2 previous times, just watching me pick up my water. I turned to face him thinking if I showed him I wasn't scared, he might clear off. Perhaps he got a kick off intimidation. I was wrong. He looked at me. Now it's pitch black because there are no streetlights in the alley, but I'm pretty sure he smiled. I turned away from him, nearly tripping up trying to maintain eye contact with him, when he starts tapping his foot and starts screaming 96. This is when I lose my shit and just ran like an Olympian out of the alley, and I checked to see if he is followed. Fortunately, he has not. I turn left and I am by a car park in a museum. I suddenly felt safe. This was short-lived. I walked up a little further when again I get that strange feeling I was being watched. I turn around and sure enough, there he was. Can this fuckface teleport or some shit? He speeds up and I do the same. This then becomes a light jog, then followed by a sprint. My phone has no charge, so I know I can't call the police or even my mom. For fuck's sake, Laura, I waited 20 minutes and had to walk up to get you. My mom shouted from behind a huge wall of the museum. Realizing this was my mom, the man turned around and went back in the same direction he came from. I told my mom he was following me, but she told me I was just being paranoid, as it's a big city and he was probably lost. I'm so glad I was late walking to the station, because if my mom didn't walk up, I dread to think what would have happened when he caught me.
Why I hate walking at night.
Long-time lurker, first-time poster. Here it goes. When I was in middle school, about 12, I had a friend that I used to do sleepovers with. On this particular night, we were staying at her house. Her mother worked nights and we knew the drill. No one in the house, don't leave the house, etc. Being 12, we were dumb. About 11 or so, we decided that we were bored and we would go for a walk. Keep in mind, this was back in 2001 or so. Neither of us had a cell phone. We left out of her house and began our walk. We had been walking for about 10 minutes when we heard someone behind us. It was 2 guys, older than us, probably high school age, maybe a bit older. It was dark and we couldn't really see them very well, and one of them asked if we had a cell phone. Being dumb, we were honest and told them no. We kept walking, now heading back towards her house. I was slightly creeped out, but didn't really know why, so I tried to brush it off. We noticed that the 2 guys were still following us, so we started walking faster, and so did they. They were a little closer every time we looked back. I remember them talking, but not what they were saying. My friend and I started to run, and damn if the guys behind us didn't start too. We were terrified at this point, and her house was still kind of far away. We decided to take a chance and bolted for the first house we saw. We rushed to the front door and started banging on it as hard as we could. The 2 guys were still coming towards us when the door opened. The woman who opened it let us in and we explained to her what was going on. The 2 guys were still outside at the end of the driveway, just standing there. After about 5 or 10 minutes, they turned and left. We waited a bit longer and then the woman drove us home. We got in the house and locked the doors up. That was the last time I went on a leisurely nighttime stroll. I'm still not sure of what the guys wanted, though I could probably guess. Either way, creepy guys. Let's not meet.
Hidden bathroom camera.
I've been lurking on here for a while now, and these stories get me through slow days at work. I decided I should tell my creepy encounter to you all. About 5 years ago, when I was 21, I lived with my now ex and his best friend in a big modern high-rise apartment complex in San Diego, California. We went to a music festival in Las Vegas at the end of June for around 5 days. After we returned, I noticed a new electrical socket had been installed on the wall across from the toilet. I thought the placement was a little odd, but knowing that maintenance comes in all the time to install new fixtures, nothing shady really crossed my mind. Maintenance often installed things and entered people's apartments without prior notice in the building, which, now that I am older, is a major red flag. But at the age of 21, I didn't think much of it. In fact, I was excited to have a new outlet, more places to plug hair appliances and phone chargers into while getting ready. I asked our roommate if he had one installed, and we all checked, and he didn't. Okay, a little odd, but maybe they're coming back to do his. I tried plugging a hair appliance in it, and it didn't work, like something was blocking the socket. My mindless self just resorted to the idea that the socket wasn't ready for use. I forgot about it after that. About 2 months later, I woke up around 2 a.m. to go pee and didn't turn on the light. While I'm peeing, I zone out ahead of me and noticed that the new socket was flashing a purple color. And that was really strange to me. I alerted my boyfriend at the time, and he was immediately concerned. He got up and began prying it off the wall with a knife. After a good 5 minutes of prying, he got it off the wall. What we found still haunts me to this day. A camera. A fucking video camera hidden within a fake wall socket. We called the police at that very moment and reported it to them. An officer came out and took down a report, as well as the camera, for evidence. Words cannot even describe the emotions that I was experiencing. I was numbed, shocked, scared yet angry. Who could have even put it there? Was it someone stalking me? Were they planning something more sinister, like killing me? I had no idea. I had always heard about hidden cameras found in public places like public restrooms, dressing rooms, and locker rooms, but never my own bathroom. I was young and I was scared as hell. My boyfriend and I spent the rest of the night laying there in shock. We both barely got any sleep. My brunch shift the next day was uncomfortable at best. I couldn't tell my coworkers why I was acting off, because the police instructed us to not tell anybody about what had happened, because it was an open investigation. They inform us that a detective will be sent out to us shortly. In the meantime, we contacted our apartment building's leasing complex, and management was extremely uncooperative, stating that they had nothing to do with it. They even tried charging us for changing the locks, which slowed the process since we had to fight that. Eventually we won and had them pay for the locks to be changed. During the time we were waiting for the locks to be changed, I felt extremely unsafe home alone and couldn't even take a nap without listening to every sound coming from the front door. A detective shows up a week later and takes all of our fingerprints. Me, my boyfriends, and our roommates, which is his best friend, and interviews all of us. After that, they say that they will review the camera and run the prints and see if they can get any leads. The detectives called a couple days later to say that they were able to watch the camera's recordings. Apparently, it had been recording for over 2 months, since the socket was first installed. And the creepiest part was, it had a memory card that had been changed out several times. Whoever planted this camera didn't come in once, but several times. They asked if I wanted to view the recordings, and I said no. I couldn't handle seeing that. Too weird. They would eventually call a month or two later, informing us that there were no fingerprints on the camera besides ours, because we handled it when we found it. It was all really fucking weird and uncomfortable, especially because we were never able to find out who did it. What was strange was that we had 2 dogs, and our dog was a big German Shepherd mix. Surely she would have attacked an intruder. My guess is that it was a maintenance worker that she'd become accustomed to, since they were always in and out of the apartment. My other guess is my then boyfriend's best friend, our roommate. But it was highly unlikely to me because we had been living with him for 3 years prior, and we were all really close. He never made me feel uncomfortable or threatened, and he never gave off that creepy vibe. I spent months wondering who it was over and over, searching for an answer. I eventually gave up and let it go. I learned to be way more aware of who is entering my apartment and always make sure that I'm there to supervise if anyone needs to enter. So, creepy fuck who put a hidden camera in my apartment bathroom. Let's not meet. P.S. I forgot to add another spooky thing that happened in relation to this. We found a black phone charger in our room a month or 2 prior, plugged into the electrical outlet. I assumed it was a friend's who had left it there and thought nothing of it. I asked around, all of my friends, and my ex's friends, and nobody said they were missing a charger. We thought nothing of it and threw it away. After the whole hidden camera incident, we were Googling what other hidden cameras look like to ensure our apartment didn't have any more. And lo and behold, we find that same charger being sold as a hidden camera. I would post a link to support my story, but I am at work and don't want to Google hidden cameras on my work PC. Feel free to Google phone charger hidden camera. I'll never know for sure if it was one since we'd thrown it away, but dear God did it send chills up my spine.
Crazy cat lady.
Just came here to share my story. Not overly long, but creepy nonetheless. I'm a 21-year-old female with a young son. I live in a small town where not a lot happens, but you know, the usual drug dealers, and though it's usually just pot, you tend to steer clear. While I was home alone one night, I was just getting ready to prepare dinner for my child and I. My partner is out of town, and not being too worried, I had the curtains open and door unlocked. I'm busy getting myself ready, utensils, ingredients, etc., when I hear a knock on the door, followed by a croaky cough. I answer the door. Usually it's just older ladies wanting to talk about Jesus and their religion. Standing at the door is a middle-aged lady with long black hair. She's on the larger side, but looks unkempt and definitely like she's on something. I ask if she's okay, and she starts full-blown yelling. "How dare you let your cat roam? He got my cat pregnant, now I have a kitten to feed and I can't afford smokes." I'm just blown away and barely mutter an excuse before she continues to go off her nut. Your cat got my cat pregnant and you need to give me money to feed it. I politely inform her that my male cat is desexed and never wanders. He does use the toilet outside, but always comes in after he's done. I shut the door and lock it. I hear a thug at the door, thinking she's just kicked it, and up the driveway she walks ranting about stupid sluts. Once I'm sure she's gone, I open the door for my persistent puppy, who keeps sniffing and whining because I assume he needs to wee. But at the door is a tiny kitten. Crazy cat lady, let's never meet again.
Innocent encounter turns out to be very sinister years later.
I've already posted once on here, but this is the initial story I considered posting. In an Ask Reddit thread a long time ago on my old account, I answered as this being one of the creepiest things that has ever happened to me, and a lot of people were freaked out. So here it goes. Not very long. I apologize if it doesn't belong here because it's not scary enough. But for me, this was a very creepy close encounter situation. In 2007, I met up with a guy online and went on a date with him in London to a pub called the Princess Alice. Everything was going well enough, but at some point I ran out of cash and had to go to the cash point a little way down the road. So I exited the pub and got the cash. On my way back, I went to open the door to the pub and I was interrupted by a man who stood in front of me and blocked my way. He wasn't remotely scary, actually seemed really polite, said sorry for nearly bumping into me. So I ignore this and I go into the pub and he said, Whoa, wait. I turn around and he says, sounds crazy, I know, but I've just won a huge amount of money on the lottery. Do you feel like celebrating? I've got a big bottle of champagne in the back and I'm thinking of going to a party. I laughed him off and said, no thanks, then just went into the pub. This was a totally random, fairly odd but otherwise forgettable incident. Until I saw articles like these in the news. This has still creeped me out a little to this day. I know he must have approached a lot of women and I was just one. But you never really know who you're talking to